Thank you. When I was growing up, one of the statements that I guess could have put on a bumper sticker was this one. Mum used to say this to me frequently. Put it back right where you found it. My dad used to say that a fair bit too when I used to go down and fiddle on his workbench downstairs in the garage. Because I'd quite often get the moments where Dad would come looking for a tool or something like that, and it would be, I don't know, out in the middle of the backyard in the rain, or there's a couple of occasions where he's powered drills and stuff. I don't know why I was allowed to use them, but they sort of turned up in all kinds of different places, and they never went back. Have you ever misplaced something that is valuable? Have you ever misplaced something that all of a sudden it becomes the most important thing to find in your life so your life can continue? Car keys, wallet, mobile phone. This one's a biggie. Passport. Oh, there's always a story with that one. We're gonna have to. We can add that to the bingo a little bit later. Who's misplaced their passport? But the interesting thing is that whenever something goes missing, the necessity to find it increases. The anxiousness to find it increases. And your day can't continue until that thing is found. And if it's something external and it happens to be at someone else's house, and you ring up that house and ask them, oh, is it there? And they go, oh, no, I don't have time to look for it right now. How does that make you feel inside? Oh, the knots start happening, don't they? And then all of a sudden, a bit later on, you might get a phone call from that person saying, yep, we've found it. You left it on the bench, or you left it near the TV, or you left it in the lounge, or it slipped down the lounge crack. But the relief that you feel, that burden that gets lifted, it's next level. It's next level. There's a guy who's pretty good at business stuff. And back in the day, he had an idea, and it sort of revolutionized transportation. And his name was Henry Ford. Anyone know Henry Ford? Yeah. And he said some pretty cool things in the business world. And one of the things that I thought particularly related to church is this one. It's pretty good. It says, coming together is the beginning. Keeping together is progress, but working together is success. Working together is success. And when you put that together with finding things, all of a sudden, when you've got a team of people finding things, it becomes easier. I don't know about you guys, but when I was growing up, I went to Brisbane Adventist College, and there's a few people in the room that also went to Brisbane Adventist College, so you'll be transported back in time, hopefully, with this story. But we were over on the oval that has the cricket pitch, and the cricket pitch oval is just this square oval. I don't know why they put a cricket pitch in the middle of a square oval, but that's a whole other thing. It's a square oval, and it's a terrible oval to start with, but it was the best oval to play Red Rover on. I think that's what we call it here. Is that what we call it here? You guys call down ball or handball down ball. So I'm just checking my naming of games. Thank you. Red Rover. And Red Rover is it, Red Rover, I call over someone wearing orange or something like that. And the person wearing orange has to bolt over and get caught. And we were playing this game. However, Luke Bacon decided that he would play the game with his lunch money in his pocket. And Luke Bacon had his lunch money in his pocket, and it was a very expensive lunch. It was $2. Because you could get a hot dog, you could get a bag of smiley face jelly lollies, and you could get a packet of Burgerman for $2. Inflation, I tell you what, it's got a lot to answer for. But Luke Bacon had his $2 in his pocket, and his pocket had a zip on it. However, what he didn't realise, and I'm sure school teachers, you've experienced this, is the pocket had a hole in the bottom of it. And Luke Bacon's this type of kid that he's very fast, but he used to, I like to say, take a dive. He used to just dive everywhere. If he was going to get caught, he'd dive. If he was nowhere near anyone else, he'd still dive over the line just to make sure he got it. But this particular day, he lost his $2. And the teacher did something amazing. She goes, "Righto, everyone, emu parade." And we all knew what it was. Does anyone else know what an emu parade is? I'm getting a few nods. This is good. It is a line of students. A line of students, and their particular job, they all have one focus: to look like an emu, walk along looking down, and if you see the $2, you bend down and pick it up. That is the sole purpose of an emu parade. And we were employed to find Luke's $2. And we did it. We were successful. It helps when you got 32 kids lined up looking for $2 on a cricket pitch. It was amazing. But when a group of people combined their efforts to find something, all of a sudden, the job became easy. The job became easy. Speaking of cricket, it's that time of year. Ladies, I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about cricket for a second. It was a great time of year, just before Christmas and over Christmas. I don't know, Fraser, you might have enjoyed it too, where there was Big Bash at night and then Test cricket during the day. I'm getting a few nods as well. This is good. And for some reason, the TVs managed to find it. But this particular time, I was in primary school and I was on the cricket team, and we're in year 7, and we were versing St. Joey's, which was the school up the road, and they were our nemesis. They were our nemesis. If we wanted to beat anyone, it was St. Joey's. And we were playing well, and I was more of a batsman bowler that could throw the arm over a little bit, but I was more of a fast bowler. But this particular day, we were getting smashed. And the day before at training, I'd decided I was going to do some spin bowling just to muck around. Shane Warne was big, and we'd all got the Shane Warne cricket kit in for Christmas and all that kind of stuff, so we all knew how to bowl spin. And so I was just mucking around in the nets, which is where you practice cricket, and I was throwing the arm over, and I was landing them, and they were actually going all right. I even developed my own version of a flipper. It just went straight on, which is what all my spin bowls did, but that's all right. There we were, and right in the middle of the game, the captain of the cricket team looks at me and goes, "Simo, we want you to bowl it over a spin." And I tell you what, anxiety started coming up inside of me. The pressure. Because here I was, a plumpy sort of blonde, reddish head kid with zinc over my nose, looked like Shane Warne. I had big shoes to fill. And there I was. I even did the hand in the dirt to get the extra grip on my fingers. Stood there for a bit with my tongue out, throwing the ball between my hands. Walked in, rolled the arm over. Ball went down the pitch. And I know you're all sitting there thinking, this is going to be a good end to the story. Because as I said, I was more of a batsman that could bowl pretty quick, but now I'm bowling spin. And it was terrible. The ball was spraying out this way. The ball was going left and right. I don't think I even landed one on the pitch. However, the one that I did land on the pitch, the guy smacked it for 6. It was a terrible effort. I never bowled spin again. Until, fast forward to 2018. Our church up at the time, Refresh Church, at North Pine Christian College there, Neil Redmond and myself, we put together an indoor cricket team for our leadership team. And in this indoor cricket team, we had Jacques Calais, we had the Redmond boys, he's got a whole team in itself, and then a few other people. But this particular night, we were in front. There was no pressure. And Jacques was keeping, those that know Jacques Calais, he was behind the stumps, he was wicket keeping, and he yells to me because we'd just been mucking around bowling spin. at the start of the game, and he goes, "Hey, why don't you do an over of spin?" Flashbacks to school. And I thought, righto, I'll give it a go. So I did. I did. There's no dirt to rub my hand on, so I had to come up with something else. So I ran my hand through my hair and lined it up, took deep breaths, tongue out, ready to go. Shane Warne 2.0. Rolled the arm over. First ball. Landed perfectly where I wanted it to go, which is a miracle in itself. God does still do miracles today. It hit the cricket pitch, and it deviated off the pitch. And it went around the batsman, and I wish it bowled him, but it didn't. Jacques Calais took the ball in his hands and stumped the guy, which is where the guy comes out of his crease. You hit the wickets with the ball, remove the bails is the technical term, and the guy's out. I had a victory with spin bowling. I had a win with spin bowling, and then got absolutely carded for the rest of the over, but never mind. But the thing is, I've got a similar, I guess, ingredients to a story, but the outcomes are totally different. A similar makeup of a story, a similar need in the story. However, the outcome of the story is completely different, and it changed the way I felt within that situation. We're going to jump into the Word this morning. We're going to spend some time in Luke. We're going to hang out in the book of Luke, and we're going to look at the rich young ruler is what we come to sort of title the story. And this morning we're going to go to Luke, and I did look it up, and I'm pretty sure it is, for those that have the little green Bible things in front of you there, I think it's page 901. If you've got it on your devices, go right ahead. Luke 18 to 30, it will be on the screen. We'll see how we go. It says this, and I'm using the New Living Translation this morning, and it says, "Once a religious leader asked Jesus this question, 'Good teacher, what should I do to inherit eternal life?'" What should I do? Is there anything that I can do to be able to inherit the thing that you're offering me this morning? The thing that you're offering me today? And then Jesus turns around and asks him a question, as Jesus often responds with a question. It says, "Why do you call me good?" Jesus asked him. "Only God is truly good." We're getting a little hint at who Jesus actually was. And then in verse 20 it says this. It says, "But to answer your question, you know the commandments. You must not commit adultery. You must not murder. You must not steal. You must not testify falsely. Honor your mother and your father." It's a pretty easy list. I don't know. I can look at that list and go, I'm pretty good up until I get the honor. And you get that list. The list mentality, and they don't commit adultery. You must not murder. Must not steal. Testify falsely and honor. It's pretty easy. And then the young man sort of says this, and he says, the man replied, "I've obeyed all these commands since I was little, since I was young." And when Jesus heard his answer, he said, there is still one thing. There is still one thing you haven't done. Sell all your possessions and give the money to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. And then come follow me. Jesus had this uncanny knack of being able to be in a situation, in a room full of people, and he was teaching in the room full of people. However, he had this uncanny knack to be able to turn on the torch and point it directly at people. Even though there were hundreds of people around them, they felt like Jesus was talking to them. That he had this special ability to be able to teach like that. And when people called him a good teacher, this is what they were referring to. It felt like they were directly talking to them as an individual. No one else in the room existed. They were able to turn on the torch, turn the lights down, and poof, you're in the spotlight. And Jesus zoomed into this guy. He zoomed into this guy, and he trolled through his life. He trod through his life, and he worked out exactly what was a stumbling block, to use a Paulism, a stumbling block, a barrier to get in the way of a relationship with Jesus, and this is it. This is it. It says, "But when the man heard this, he became very sad, for he was very rich. He was very wealthy. When Jesus saw that he was sad, he said a little story and says, how hard is it for the rich to enter the kingdom of God? In fact, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God. Those that heard this asked, then who can be saved? And he replied, what is impossible for people is possible for God. And then Peter goes on a little tangent. And he says, we've left our homes to follow you. And yes, Jesus replied, and I assure you that everyone who has given up house or wife or brothers or parents or children for the sake of the kingdom of God will be repaid many times over in this life and will have eternal life in the world to come. You see, wealth was this guy's thing. Wealth was this guy's thing. It was his focus. It was the thing that if he lost it, he would spend a lot of his time looking for it again. It's something between him and God as well. So you can't use a group of people to go on an emu parade and go find it. This guy was so concerned with the wealth that he had that it cost him a relationship with Jesus. It cost him a relationship with Jesus. There's a little spot. We used to ride to it as kids. We grew up near the area. It's called Wellington Point. It's right on the beach. I think I've told stories about it before. You can actually walk out to this island on a sandbar at low tide. But there's one thing in particular that we used to love doing as kids. And that was, they've got these giant fig rubber tree things there. And they're low growing and they've got big branches and things. And we used to climb them for hours. We used to climb right up the top. We used to climb as far as you could. And the funny thing is with these long branches, over the years, they've had to put supports on them because all the kids used to walk along and see how far you could get before you fall off. It was a great Sabbath afternoon activity. The amount of emergency rooms we've visited over the years. But Wellington Point, it was a highlight. Wellington Point was a highlight, and we experienced these things that climbing trees was great. But we were dressed for the occasion. See, Mum was a thinker. She used to put the change of clothes in the car for church and stuff, and we'd have our footy shorts on and our singlets and our thongs or volleys because they were good climbing shoes. We got serious about our tree climbing. Dunlop volleys. And so she had it. And so we went and had these picnics under the trees and things, and we'll smash down our peanut butter and honey sandwiches, and then we're off. We're either up the trees and running along and dancing around in the trees, or we're over at the jetty, jumping off the jetty on the seaside. But we were dressed for the occasion. There's another tree that I want to draw your attention to, and it's right at the gates of Jericho. Right at the gates of Jericho. Actually, it's a bit further in at Jericho. And the Bible states that this is an important tree. The Bible states that it's an important tree. Even songs have been written about this particular tree. And everyone's sitting there going, what? Either that or you've already worked it out. There's a little story, and it's about a guy by the name of Zacchaeus. And there's a song. The reason why the songs are written about the tree is there's that kid's song, you know. If you've grown up in churchland, Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. No, you're not going to keep going for me? He went down for the Lord he wanted to sing. Anyway, we're going to have a look at the story of Zacchaeus. So we're going to remain in Luke. And we're going to, I think we're going to chapter 19 this time. I'm going to start at verse 19. I'm pretty sure that's where it is. It might not be. No, 19 verse 1, sorry. 19 verse 1. And Jesus entered Jericho, and he made his way through the town. And there was a man there named Zacchaeus. And he was a chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very rich. He tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. And it's a pretty well sort of set up side of the story right here. Luke is very, very descriptive when it comes to writing his gospel stories. And here we find Jesus made his way through town. The concept is that, or everyone thinks that Jesus was just making his way through town. He wasn't planning on staying the night. He wasn't planning on stopping too much. He was just on his way through. And there was a man named Zacchaeus, and he was the chief tax collector. He wasn't just a dude that went and collected the money and all that kind of stuff. This guy was organized. This guy had a pyramid scheme working under him to make money. This guy, he worked with the Romans. And the Romans didn't care how the money came out. The Romans didn't care how much money was put on the top of the taxes. The Romans just didn't care as long as they got payday. And here was Zacchaeus going, hey, I've got a business idea. I'm going to go to my regional manager and I'm going to go talk to him and say, hey, I'll collect your taxes. I've even got this group of people under me, accountants. We call them accountants. And they're going to help me out. And not only that, is it says that he became very rich, which means that the people in the pyramid scheme under him, they also would have been rich. He managed to funnel the money into his bank account. And he tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short. Too short. I don't know, I sort of get a vibe Danny DeVito. You know? Sort of real short and anyway. And here he is, and he's trying to get a look at Jesus. There's a crowd of people around Jesus, and they're swarming him. I've got to speed up a little bit. They're swarming him, and here's Zacchaeus. You just sort of picture him in the back of the crowd just trying to get through. It's sort of like getting out of the MCG after the Boxing Day Test match. And they're just trying to get through, and people obviously didn't like him, and you can sort of picture them. The guy is conveniently at elbow height. And there's a tax collector trying to get through the crowd. You can picture them, and they're elbowing him, they're punching him, they're shoving him, they're moving him around the place, and he was just not having a good time. So he ran ahead. He ran ahead and climbed He climbed a sycamore tree that was beside the road, because Jesus was going to pass that way. So he looks at the crowd of people and he looks at the direction that Jesus is about to head, and he takes off down the road. And just bear in mind, he was not dressed for this occasion. He's a wealthy tax collector. He's growing up in the Middle East. He's a lord, I guess, if you want to use an Englishism. He's got a dress on. He's got a funny hat. Definitely no PPE. And here he is, he's legging it down the road to a sycamore tree because Jesus was going to pass that way. Jesus was going to come and move that way. He looked at Zacchaeus and called him by his name. Zacchaeus, he said, quick, come down, for I must be a guest in your house today. Rewind a little bit. The little guy is the little guy is hanging onto a tree limb, right? As I said, he's not dressed for the occasion. He hasn't got pants on. He hasn't got Dunlop volleys, and he hasn't got all these different things. Can you imagine what the crowd of people under the tree are looking up at? Scottish. And when Zacchaeus quickly climbed down, took Jesus to his house with great excitement and joy. If we rewind back into Luke 18, what did we experience with the rich young ruler? When Jesus interacted with him, all of a sudden it went to very sad. But here we find Zacchaeus with great excitement and joy. There's two different reactions to the same situation. Two different reactions to the same situation. However, it was everyone else in the room that was displeased. He's gone to be the guest of a tax collector, they grumbled. Meanwhile, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and said, I'll give half of my wealth to the poor. And I'll have, if I've cheated people on their taxes, I'll give them back 4 times as much. And Jesus responded, "Salvation has come to this house today. For this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham." There were laws when it came to stealing in Bible times. There were laws that if the thing had broken or whatever, you had to pay it back. I think it was 5 times as much. Or if you couldn't replace it with the identical item, you had to buy something more extravagant. And so this is kind of culture where he says, if I've stolen from people, I'll give it back 4 times as much. And it's interesting that if you look at the gift of grace, it was after this moment where Zacchaeus has turned around and said, "I'm going to give back as much as I can," that Jesus says, salvation has come to this place today. In other words, grace has come to this place today. And the grace that I pour out is an exuberant amount. It's more than the replacement value of what you're doing. It's a perfect amount. For the Son of Man has come to seek and save those who are lost. The Son of Man has come to seek and save those who are lost. Have you ever lost something? Have you ever lost that thing that will change your life? Well, the rich young ruler did. He lost the connection with Jesus. Zacchaeus, however, he went looking. He went and climbed a tree to go look for it. No one else would join his emu parade, but there he was, looking for the thing that he was missing. And it found him. For the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. I'll invite the band up as I wrap up. But here, where Henry Ford gives us this little comment here. Coming together is the beginning. Keeping together is the progress, and working together is success. If you put that into the context of the rich young ruler, put that into the context of Zacchaeus, then all of a sudden, when coming together is the beginning, the rich young ruler came to be with Jesus. Zacchaeus wanted to be with Jesus. Keeping together is progress, and Zacchaeus spent a bit more time with Jesus. However, when Jesus interacted with the rich young ruler and said, "You know what, you've got a barrier in your life. Are you happy to take that barrier down?" And the guy said no, because he reacted to be very sad. And Zacchaeus turned up and goes, "Yes, Lord, I am going to remove that barrier." We don't know too much more about Zacchaeus, but I would imagine that he spent some time working together with Jesus. We have 2 very similar stories, 2 very different outcomes. 2 very similar stories, but with the people that are involved with them, they put the right ingredients together to get their own narrative. But Zacchaeus put his together to get the perfect story. When something is lost, we simply return it to its rightful place. Here, the last word of the passage means exactly that: to return a man to his rightful place next to Jesus. If something's lost, we all have these stories of praying for things and miraculously finding them, and we've heard thousands of stories. Jesus is involved with that. But when a person's lost, their right place is right next to Jesus.